Hey there, knife people. Sea Monsters here with another traditional slip joint knife show and tell. Today we're going to be looking at the Schatt Morgan Keystone Series Big Jack. This is a limited edition, limited run knife produced by Queen Cutlery in the Schatt Morgan Keystone Series. I won't bother getting into how all the things separate, but when I say things, I mean product offerings. Basically, Schatt Morgan is Queen's top-of-the-line premier slip joint knife brand. It's not actually two different companies. It's just like car companies have different brands. In other words, Toyota and Lexus, or since we're talking about American stuff, Chevrolet and GMC, Ford and Lincoln. In this case, it's Queen and Schatt Morgan. So the knife you see before you is a jackknife, meaning that it's got two blades that pivot on this end, which is the smaller bolster, front bolster. Bolsters are nickel silver. There's your rear end cap. There are a couple of unique things about this particular knife, one of which is that the covers, the handle covers, or in modern knife speak, scales, but when we're talking about slip joint knives, we refer to them as covers. The other two can be interchangeable. We're all friends here, so we're just having discussion. It's okay if we want to call them scales or covers. Nobody needs to get too wrapped around the axle over terminology. But when you're talking slip joint knives, tend to be a lot of traditionalists in that community, and so they like to share their knowledge, which is a good thing. This kind of knife, the slip joint knife, is of course becoming a little more yesterday's news, or a lot more yesterday's news, and you know, with the younger people particularly, a lot of them are really just into the modern folding, locking knives. Nothing wrong with those. I love them, but I think anybody, particularly that's into knife collecting, that doesn't get into slip joint knives, missing a whole lot of fun. The covers on this knife, I digress, having a rant. I guess not a rant, I digressed. But the handle covers on this knife are made of camel bone. They're jigged camel bone, and beautifully done. Camel bone, you can see in a lot of, it's a versatile organic material, and one of the cool things about it is that it's somewhat like stag in the sense that you end up with each knife having a little bit of character that's unique to that knife. All the knives don't end up identical. It doesn't quite have as much of that characteristic as stag does, but it has a little more than cowbone or dyed cowbone will have. If you looked at cowbone in its natural format, you'd see more uniqueness. But the camel bone, for reasons I don't know, tends to have a little more unique characteristic piece to piece than cowbone. Also, there's another important facet to this knife that makes it unique. That Keystone Shield is pearl. Very, very cool. Over the years, Queen has produced a few Schatt Morgans with pearl shields, I believe. Baby baby elephant toe, or toenail, whichever you like to call it by pattern. I have one of those that has a pearl shield, but you don't see many of them with the pearl shield, particularly not one this large. And it's because it's that size, you see a lot of the pearl, the characteristic of the pearl in it, particularly when you move it around. My camera's not good enough to show you that, but you'll have to trust me on how that iridescence shows up. Very nice. The nickel silver bolsters are perfectly polished. This has brass pins, by the way, and brass liners. Nice big back springs. Beautifully done quality right here. The back springs are cut pretty squarely. There's a little deviation in it, but there's no gapping, which is the important thing. And in fact, this knife in particular, I've said in the past videos that Queen's quality can kind of be hit and miss. Recently it hasn't been hit and miss. They've been producing very nice knives. Knives to pretty much rival GEC. I think GEC is slightly more consistent right now, but Queen is closing that gap steadily. Very nice to see. If you look closely, you'll see that the front bolsters, the ends are crowned. There's a nice chamfer, and it is a chamfer, but it's radiused, which is why we call it a crown, across there, making it beautifully smooth to the touch. Just another nice detail on the knife. Of course, the rear is very smooth, no gapping between the covers, the brass liners, and the back springs. It's all very tight, beautifully done. The knife does not have a half stop, which is a shame to see in a knife this big, but that's just fact of the matter. It's a big drop point blade. It mates up almost perfectly between the tang and the back spring in the fully open position. That back spring is flush, and the spine of the blade is almost flush with the back spring. I mean, beautifully done. That's a hallmark indicator of quality. Whoever put this knife together back at Queen, A++ job. That is almost custom quality. Not quite, but close. I believe the knife steel is ATS 34. It's beautifully polished, nicely done. On the back of the tang it says F&W, which stands for file and wire. That's a testing methodology. You can look up on the internet. I'm not going to bother to explain it to you, but it's an old-time traditional slip joint knife way of testing the steel, the hardness of the steel. On the front, it says Schatt Morgan stamped into the blade tang. There is a slight swedge here. It's very subtle, very elegant. It's actually very well done. Sadly, this knife, which in many ways is a testament to modern slip joint knife craft. I mean, the quality of this whole knife is so well done. It's a shame to see, and hopefully you can see that in my crappy camera, Schatt Morgan put that huge billboard on the main blade tang, the etching. And I say huge because it's gargantuan. And it's not that it's really ugly, but for a top-end premier knife, for something that is a collector's piece, which is what this is, I'm not going to use it, though it's built well enough to tolerate a lot of use. But for a collector's piece to have that kind of gaudy billboard, that's not right. So that is a flaw in the knife, a design flaw, not a physical quality manufacturing or material-based flaw, just a design flaw. And I'd like to see Queen take the Schatt Morgan series and not use that huge billboard. It just looks wrong. If you check my channel out, you'll see that I have another video on a split back Whittler. It's a little bit smaller knife. Well, it's a lot smaller knife. But the blade etching on that is really what I'd like to see, not this great big S&M. And that Schatt Morgan, get your minds out of the gutter, kids. But that's what I'd like to see them do. It's a shame they didn't do it on this. It doesn't make the knife ugly. It's still a beautiful, beautiful piece as far as I'm concerned. Just doesn't belong. You heard the snap there. Walk and talk on this knife is impeccable. Pull weight, I'm going to say, is between a 6 and a 7. It's not super, super strong, but it's strong. And it's stronger in the open position, in other words, fully open, than it is when you're trying to open the knife, which is kind of a nice feature. I'm not sure how they did it, but that makes opening the knife pretty easy and closing the knife more difficult, which is exactly what you want. Secondary blade, the pull weight on that is actually more of a 7. It, for whatever reason, seems a little more stout. Probably just because the blade is smaller, so the nail nick is a little closer to the pivot, which always makes opening a little tougher. But beautifully done. It's got a nice swedge, very elegant. You know, not a deep swedge, but a subtle swedge. This is one of 100. There were only 100 made. It says that back here on the edge. You may or may not be able to see that. It is perfectly flush there. The blade spine with the back spring where they made up, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Beautiful, beautiful slip joint knife craft. A+ work, Queen. That's what I like to see right there. And this is a super useful blade size. You know, like I said, I'm not going to use this blade, but I have some other knives that I have that similar size, same size pen blade, because that's what this is, but it's really bigger than you would use on a pen. But super handy, super convenient, super useful. Beautifully done. And again, you hear a nice snap to that. If I pulled it off camera, sorry, I'm sure you'll live. But there's the knife. There are very few of these left on the open market. So you really need to search if you want one of these. I got in on one of these early. I have a connection, and that's why I got it. This was also hand-picked for me, so if the quality that I'm ranting and raving about on this knife, for all I know, the rest may not be quite to this level. But I imagine if they're not this good, they're real close. Some may even be slightly better. As of late, Queen has been doing a great job with their knives, and you know, this is an absolutely current example of what they've been doing. For what it's worth to know, if you look in here, you can hopefully see a little bit of the blade centering. The main blade, that big drop point, is slightly pushed to the presentation cover, so it's not perfectly centered. The secondary blade, oddly enough, is slightly pushed to the rear cover, so that's not perfectly centered either, but neither of them is so far over that they rub against the brass liners. So I'm not going to knock that as a quality issue, because it's really not. Blades work perfectly, walk and talk is perfect. This knife is solidly put together, and I'm extremely happy to have it as part of the collection. It's a great big knife, closed. It is, I believe, well, I have a ruler here just in case you're curious. It is about 4 inches, so it's a fairly large knife, though that length isn't just what makes it large. It's the breadth of the blades, the length of the blades, just the overall size of the knife. It's a big knife as slip joints go, but darn near perfection. Hope you enjoyed it. Go get you some slip joint knife goodness. Take care. Later.